Hi everybody, so I've just finished Atomfall after 20 odd hours with a combination of playing on my Xbox Series S and PC, so I'm really excited to do a review because I absolutely love this game. First off, I've got to say that Atomfall is probably going to be my game of the year, and it's only April. Unless a really special release comes along in the next few months, Atomfall I think is going to be my best game of 2025. Now I've got that out of the way, I need to explain why. Because I think unless you understand what type of game Atomfall is, and it's quite an unusual one, when you start playing or when you're watching the footage, you might get bored, you might get a bit confused, a bit frustrated, and maybe not stick with Atomfall until the point where it really clicks and you get hooked into the gameplay. So, in my opinion, you could describe Atomfall as a single player, open world, first person, retro, mystery, action, horror, survival game with RPG elements. Now that is a bit of a mouthful, but I guess another way you could describe Atomfall is you could say it's like a Fallout-Lite or a Stalker-Lite, or maybe even something. I think it's really similar to what an open world version of Resident Evil should be. So if you've played Resident Evil 8 Village, imagine that on an open world scale, where you've got like the village as the central hub, but it's a lot bigger. Imagine it was like almost like a town, and then you've got these much larger areas coming off the village, like you do have in Resident Evil Village, where you have like the castle and different things. But those areas you can visit, explore, do what you've got to do, come back, but you can go back again. And in fact, you have to go back again because you need to explore different quest lines, that sort of thing. And obviously, in Atomfall, you don't have the crazy monsters that you get in Resident Evil, but you do get plenty of crazed villagers and soldiers, and there are different types of monsters as well. And most importantly, I think, interesting places to explore. And especially with Resident Evil, this is where a big thing. A lot of the time in Atomfall, the most interesting places are underground. Maybe they're bunkers or cave systems. So I think that if you enjoy Resident Evil Village or Resident Evil 4 Remake, or even the Resident Evil 2 and 3 remakes, that gameplay loop of exploring somewhere, and for me, especially with something like Resident Evil 2 and 3, it's the atmosphere of Raccoon City. And Raccoon City is very different from Wyndham in Atomfall, but it's the attention to detail and the loving craft that has gone in creating that environment that shined through. So I think if you like the Resident Evil games, those ones, I think Atomfall could well resonate with you. Just as much as I think the players, if you really enjoy like Fallout 4 or 76 or Fallout 3 and Stalker, whether that be the original ones or Stalker 2, Atomfall is going to be, I think, your game. So I guess I should list what I really like about Atomfall. Now, these aren't really in any particular order, but if we start with the open world, size-wise, the way it works is you kind of have these big areas. They're about the same size as a Sniper Elite area if you play Sniper Elite. And there's several of these, and they're linked via passageways or doors. So it's not like one massive open world like it would be in, say, Stalker, or it would be in, say, DayZ. It's these big areas that you travel between, like in the original Stalker games. But even in these big areas, say one of them is like the village of Wyndham, and then the other is like the Dales. Around these and in these, you also get cave systems and bunker systems, which, again, in and of themselves are really big. In some cases, sometimes they're small, but a lot of the time they're really big. And it's almost like a different area you're going in. And you're going backwards and forwards between these areas, visiting traders and different NPCs, and following, as I say, these different quest lines. But it's all pretty dense as well. So when you first go into an area and you look at your map, and your map just kind of has some points of interest, it doesn't have lots of quest markers or anything, but you look at it and you go, okay, there's lots to look at here, and you wander around and you discover areas and they come up on your map. And it seems pretty big. But once you get to know where everything is, you get to know the route through stuff. It actually doesn't take that long to get across these maps. So you don't need a fast travel system. And because it's hub-based, you can go back to the central hub and then you can go out to one of the other areas. And there are other ways around as well where you can avoid the hub to go to different areas. So it's very clever the way they've done it. Because if I said, oh, it's an open world game with no fast travel, you're probably like, oh, God, you got to have fast travel. But it's because everything's so dense, you don't really need it. And of course, it's not on the scale of a Stalker. It's not on the scale of a Fallout 4, but it's still pretty big. And the sheer joy of exploring these maps is a real highlight. Just like in Stalker and Fallout, and even in Resident Evil, you're going along, and then you'll maybe go through some trees, and there's a big building in front of you, and it will come up. You've discovered a new area, or there's a castle, or there's a door that you go through, and you've discovered a new bunker. That sort of feeling that you get, which is brilliant, and it all looks really good. I mean, I think Rebellion have done a lot of work improving their graphics engine. And especially in the darker areas, like in the caves and the bunkers, the game looks really, really superb. I think sometimes outside, there's something about them. Maybe it's me, I don't know, but there's something about their engine. Sometimes it looks like there's too much sharpening or not enough anti-aliasing on foliage, like grass and things like that. And you see this more on the Xbox than you do on the PC. But I think they've got to work on that. But what they have improved a lot is sound-wise. Now, the sound is great. It's very immersive. There's lots of different things happening in and around you in the soundscape. But they've also, I think, addressed the tinniness of the guns that you normally get in Sniper Elite games, and things like Strange Brigade as well, where rifles just sound too high pitched. They seem to have more of a thump in this game, and definitely, I enjoy firing them a lot. When I play Sniper Elite and I fire lots of the rifles, I'm like, oh, that's too tinny, but not in this one at all. The gunplay is really good once you understand that because of the lack of the ammo, you need to make every shot count, and you can't actually carry much stuff either. So you need to be hitting headshots with your rifle, or getting close enough with your shotgun so you can hit people in the head, or with a pistol you've got to be hitting them with headshots. Very similar to Resident Evil, doing things that way. Or when you get the bow, that's nice and stealthy. And you can combine this, and often you have to combine this with melee. So if an enemy's too close, you can give them a kick. That gives them a stagger and they go back. That will give you enough time to change weapons or reload, or get your melee weapon out and whack them with your melee weapon, which you can do like a heavy attack with, or a fast attack, or you can actually throw your melee weapon at them as well, which is pretty cool. Although I didn't do much melee in this playthrough, I'm pretty sure in the next one I probably will. Stealth is handled in a unique way, and I know some people have been complaining about this, but I think it's pretty cool. So there's no visibility meter. If you go around a corner and an enemy sees you, they see you. That's it. They've seen you. You know, there's no like, oh, I wonder what that's over there. You know, they've seen you. But whether they decide to engage you, like attack you or not, all depends on the threat you are to them. So if you're in an open world area, not in someone's base, and they're away, and you're not aiming your gun at them, they'll just say, oh, bugger off, you know, go away, sort of thing. But if you move too close to them and you get your gun out, they'll then start attacking you. So most of the time you can just back off and you won't have any combat. And in fact, you're better off most of the time avoiding combat and trying to be stealthily, because you'll be outnumbered and you probably won't have enough bullets, or you'll be on the way to somewhere where you're thinking, right, I want to keep hold of all my bullets and my meds, because when I go into this bunker or this cave system, I know I'm going to have a bit of a battle. And so the last thing you want to do is burn through all that ammo while, you know, fighting some outlaws that you bumped into in the open world. This scarcity is part of the survival elements you get in Atomfall, and it does have a few. I mean, it's not like Daisy or anything like that, but ammo is scarce. You've got to use quite a few consumables for health and curing yourself from sickness in terms of infection, and you've got to craft these from basic resources. So as you're wandering around, you're picking up cloth, you're picking up alcohol, you're picking up scraps of metal and glass and that sort of stuff. And you've really got a limited inventory space for items and weapons. This is very Resident Evil-like. You know, you as far as I can tell, and unless they bring it into the game, that you can't get a bigger backpack. And so you're constantly looking at the weapons you've got and the ammo that you've got for those weapons. So what should you be taking with you? What things do you have to drop? And although there are traders, the traders, it's all on a barter system. So it's not like you can swap goods for money, which, you know, is easy to carry. You know, if you've got a med kit, you can't swap that for money. So you've got to go to a trader and they might want to swap it for some ammo or something like that. So you've got to choose what you want to do. Just like in Resident Evil, though, and I guess it has it in don't know if Fallout does it a little bit, doesn't it? And Stalker. There are special storage boxes you can go to, which when you put stuff in there, it's available in other places around the map. And the way that they do it in Atomfall is quite clever, but I won't tell you about it. I won't spoil that, but I think it's pretty cool the way they do it. The way that the game guides you through the stories is, well, I mean, it's a little bit unique in the way they do it, in the fact that when you go into an area, you'll have this big map, and there won't be much on it. And as you walk around and you discover areas, the POI will be filled in. And then if you say you talk to someone and they say, "Oh, well, you're looking for this place. Well, why don't you check over there?" And then they'll put a marker on your map, which will normally be a question mark. And you go over to that place and you have a look around and you find something. And these are called leads. So although you don't end up with a map full of quest markers like you would say in Stalker or Assassin's Creed or something like that, you end up with lots of text ones. And it can seem a little bit complicated at first, but once you get used to it, it's quite simple, because you tend to just be following one quest at a time. And when you get into a place, you might discover something that will then terminate that lead or finish that lead. And some of the leads will be main story leads that are taking you towards your ultimate goal of escaping from the area or finding out what's going on. Some of them might just be interesting stories like side quests. Some of them might be giving you the points you need to upgrade your character because you can buy certain skills. And it's all done quite a clever way, because every time you interact with someone and you talk into an NPC, you can choose how you want to talk to them, just like in Fallout. And depending on how you choose to interact with them, different things will happen. And so you're constantly thinking, okay, so who should I trust? Who am I going to help? Who am I going to kill, maybe? Who am I going to give away? Who am I going to betray? All these sort of things. And it's a real pleasure to play. Because the game, as I said at the beginning, doesn't take too long. My first playthrough took just over 20 hours, and people have finished faster, and I'm sure if I tried to explore everywhere, it would take a few hours more. But there are multiple endings to Atomfall, and also there's lots of different ways to play through. I played through as a fairly honest person using a rifle, and I didn't kill many of the sort of important NPCs, if any of them. I don't think killed any of them, even the ones that I thought were going to betray me or I couldn't trust. I left them alone. Obviously I killed lots of like soldiers and bandits and druids, but you could play through as a right git, or you could play through as someone who was like lying to everybody, that sort of thing, which is really good. And I guess the final point has to be the thing that finishes it for me, which is so important for me in most of the games I play, and that is the atmosphere and feel of the game. So Atomfall is set in the early 1960s in northern England. You're in this quarantine zone where there's been an accident at the nuclear power station, and you've woken up, you don't remember who you are, and you've got to try and escape, and you've got to find out what happened along the way. And there's so many amazing influences, from the UK book, film and TV history. I couldn't mention them all. In fact, I probably wouldn't recognise them all. But things like, classic Doctor Who, The Prisoner, the original Prisoner TV series, the Quatermass Experiment, if you're aware of that, the War of the Worlds book, The Day of the Triffids, if you remember that from TV, the original one, The Wicker Man with film as well, again the original one. All this stuff is kind of there, and it's done so well. I can only think that Rebellion have been working on this game for several years to get it this good and this polished. It really is, and it kind of explains why, say, Sniper-Lite Resistance wasn't as great as it was, because they farmed that out to another studio. I mean, and don't get me wrong, Sniper-Lite Resistance is a great Sniper-Elite game, but it's more like DLC to Sniper-Elite 5 than a new game in and of itself. And I think they've really hit pay dirt with this one. They've done so well. It's done very, very well. Now there are stuff that's missing, stuff that I didn't see that there may be in the game, but I didn't see. Was you don't really get optical scopes for sniping, like maybe a special Carl Fairburn scope. I'm very surprised that you can't hide bodies as well. That's a classic Sniper Elite thing. The fact that once you've killed someone, you could pick them up and hide the body somewhere, because part of the stealth mechanism is if you kill someone and they are then discovered, the NPCs will then go into suspicious mode, or booby trapping bodies. That's something you can do in Sniper-Elite. Setting booby traps as well. Their engine can do that. So again, if you're being chased by NPCs, you could put like a tripwire down or something. I'm surprised there's not more climbing as well on like ivy on the sides of buildings, like you can do in Sniper-Elite. Lures as well, the ability to throw something like a glass bottle or blow a whistle in order to move a NPC away from where you want them to be. And I think the first person is an inspired choice for this. But I wouldn't mind if you could flick backwards and forwards between first and third. Mainly so that you could then see your character, and then you could have different skins to them. But don't get me wrong, I mean, first person is brilliant in this game. I'd have also liked to see, and who knows whether this might happen, is interaction between the various factions when they're in the open worlds. So, for example, you have the soldiers faction, and then you have the bandits faction. So, as far as I'm aware, there's nothing apart from. In fact, I'm not going to say anything else, but there's nothing in the main game where the soldiers are out in the open world and they come into contact with the bandits and start shooting at each other like you would get in Stalker, where you get, or in Fallout. That sort of thing doesn't happen. Or even say the NPCs interacting with the various, what I call them, monsters in the world that they come across. They just seem to be able to walk past them and nothing happens. So it's not a deal breaker, but I'd like to see that. And there's also respawning of NPCs once you've cleared an area. Now, I'm kind of a bit mixed about this. Because once you've been through an area, let's say there's a bunker complex, you go through and you kill everybody. Should there be anybody there when you come back next time? And one argument is there shouldn't be. The other one is that if you want to have an extended end game, when you get to the point of the game where, okay, it's going to end now, and it's going to end if you choose to go through this door or follow this path. But if you want to hang around in the game and carry on exploring, that NPCs coming back makes it more interesting, I guess, as well. And modding as well. I'd love to see modding support added to this game. It would be amazing if modders could get their hand on it. I think if they added modding support, it gives so much life to a game that extends it beyond its natural life as a video game. So as a natural life as a video game, it's going to be interesting for, say 5 years max, unless it's getting things like DLC and things like that happening to it. But if it's got modding involved, then just like Fallout 4, just like Stalker, it extends the life on it. It's also a bit odd that excuse me, that the characters don't smoke. Because in 1950s and 1960s and 70s and 80s England, everybody would have been smoking, especially soldiers. There we go. Anyway, so I've tried not to share much different gameplay in the video you're seeing, because I think discovering these new areas for the first time is one of the real pleasures of Atomfall. But to sum things up, I fully expect Atomfall to be my game of the year for 2025. And if you're a fan of single-player games like Fallout, like Stalker, like Resident Evil, I think you should check this out, because I think there's a great chance that you'll love it. Highly, highly recommended. Okay, that's enough from me. What do you think, though? Put your questions and comments down below. And, of course, I'll see you again soon.